So here we are in Logic Pro, and I've got a really basic project open here. I've got one drum loop, I've got a couple bass loops, and I've got a couple synth loops. So I'm just going to play the drum loop with this synth, and let's give it a go. Okay, pretty basic stuff, right? So what I want to do is, every time that kick drum hits, I want to duck that synth, so you get that ducking effect. So the first thing I need to do is, I need to get some MIDI going. I want to sort of extract that kick drum in the form of MIDI from this drum loop. So to do that, I'm going to select the drum loop, and I'm going to go up to track, and I'm going to go to replace or double drum track. And it has opened this window here, and you can select the instrument. So I'm going to leave it as kick. I'm going to leave it as doubling. I don't want to replace the original drum loop. I still want that just in case. Well, actually, I do want it for this project, right? And then you've got the relative threshold. So if I open the MIDI region for this drum replacement, so I'm just going to click on it and press E on the keyboard. And then if I move the threshold, you'll start to see more MIDI notes being populated because it is now being triggered by more information. So the higher the threshold, effectively, the less MIDI notes you're going to have. So what you want to do is, in this instance, I just want the kick drum, and I only want it to, I want the kick on every beat, basically. I don't want the accents of the kick as you get towards the end of a bar. So I'm going to drag it up until I get sort of that even amount of kick drums. So when I play this now, in fact, you can click on preview in the dialog window and you will hear just what I mean. And to stop the preview, you have to press preview again. I pressed the spacebar hoping it would do, and it didn't. So the actual MIDI section itself, I'm going to solo that now and play that to you. So it's automatically selected for me an acoustic kick. I'm not bothered by the kick sample it's using because I'm going to mute it anyway when we do the ghost kick process. So I'm just going to play this now. Okay, it sounds pretty good. And then when I preview it again, what I'm listening here for are sort of flamming where it's slightly out of time, but it's quantized anyway. It's a tight drum loop, so it sounds fine to me, but I'm just going to preview it again anyway. I keep pressing space to stop it. Force of habit there, muscle memory. You've got to press preview. Trigger note, I'm going to leave to auto. It selects it for me, but you can see when I click on this drop down, you can select any one of these notes, and you can see from sort of D sharp 0, as it were, and onwards, it's triggered to a particular sample, but I'm going to leave it on auto because it's selected by the instrument, I'm led to believe. And the timing offset, you can change that. So if you are experiencing flam, you can do the timing offset and it will move the notes, but you could just leave it as it is and then go and quantize it in the editor window anyway. But I can see I've got an extra note there, so I'm going to drag up. There we go. I've gone to minus 4.4 dB in terms of relative threshold, and now I've got a nice even amount of kick drum samples here. So I'm just going to press OK, commit that. I don't need this window on the left here. And now I've got my kick drum. So this is what I'm going to be using for my ghost kick. Okay, let's create this ghost kick sidechain. So the first thing I'm going to do is this. In the sampler for this MIDI track, I've brought down the volume in the amplitude section here to minus 14 dB because I wanted the kick drum, the MIDI kick, to be at a similar level to the rest of the samples. And then what I'm going to do is this. I'm actually going to disable the output. In theory, I'm just going to put no output. So when I play this, I've muted the drum loop, but all you're hearing is the synth itself. So obviously there is still signal from the MIDI, as we can see in the track, but there is no output. So then on this synth track that I want to sidechain, I want to duck when this kick drum comes in, I've got the Logic compressor, and I've actually used the preset of slammed kick as my start here. It's using a classic VCA compressor, nice fast compressor. And I've used this one because I only want the threshold and the ratio parameters here. Obviously, we've got makeup as well. I've turned auto gain off. I've got a 1 dB of makeup on here just to get it back to a similar level to what it was at before. So what I'm going to do here is I've got the threshold set to minus 26 dB, and I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to use the ratio to control the amount of ducking. So I'm going to slowly drag it up, and it's probably going to get to about 20:1 when it gets to the sort of level I want it to be at. And you'll start to hear the synth duck. So let's give it a go. So you go, that's 20:1, okay? And on the meter here, I'm going to play it again and look at the gain reduction. It's kind of like between -8, -9 dB. Now, you could do it the other way. You could do the threshold super low and then have a lower ratio. But what I find is it absolutely slams the rest of the audio, and I don't want that to happen. In a simpler way of putting it, I find that having the threshold here at sort of minus 26 and then using the ratio at a higher ratio, it's not as aggressive with the sidechain. In fact, let's do it anyway. So I'm going to drag the threshold all the way down to, like, I don't know, we'll go all the way down to minus 50. And then I'll slowly bring up the ratio again. And I'll only need to get to about sort of 3 to 4 to 1 in terms of ratio, and you'll start to hear quite pronounced ducking. That's 4:1. Now, it really depends on the effect you're after, because that might be what you're after. In that case, great, roll with it. But personally, I like to go the other way and have it. So I'm going to set it back to minus 26, which just so happens was the threshold setting of the preset, and it worked. And then I'm going to drag it back up to 20:1, and now I'm going to play it again. And you can hear it's less aggressive. I'm going to put it all the way to 30:1, and let's have a listen to that. What you could also do here is you could drag the threshold down again to make it even more pronounced. So just play with the threshold and the ratio to suit the particular effect that you're after. But that's essentially it. And all the while, you can't hear that kick drum. So I'm going to drag it back to 20:1, and then I'm going to bring in the original drum loop, and let's have a listen. And this is without the compressor, the sidechain. So hopefully you can hear the difference there. Quite subtle. In fact, let's drag it up to 30:1. Let's make it more pronounced and bring it back in. Yeah, excellent stuff. I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring in this bass loop I've got going on here as well. And let's have a listen with the actual bass loop as well. Cool, something to play around with. So there you go, folks. A really simple way of creating a ghost kick and sidechaining a kick drum to a synth. I think I said in the beginning, a synth to a kick drum. Either way, you get the idea. So that's how we're going to create, or rather you can create, a ghost kick in Logic Pro. Give it a go.